fighting with the house elf.
Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal, a podcast for geeks, the show about good friends hanging out, talking about the things we all love. My guest today is Bryan Mark Taylor, and you guys all know Andrew Side's my co-host. Thanks for being with us, Bryan. I know it's late. What time is it by you right now? It's early.
It's
for
He's in
you.
Utah.
6 o'clock, so we're
He's still got sunlight.
yeah.
So thanks for being on the show. I really, so I don't know, I briefly touched on what the show is about. We're just literally going to talk about your artwork. And then I asked you for a list of hobbies. So you sent me a bunch of stuff, a couple of those things are very interesting, by the way.
Did not know that you spoke fluent Italian. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. No, it's a fun part of my life. Home away from home.
Thanks for being with us.
Did you
Bryan.
pick that
I know
up
it's
while
late.
traveling, or
I lived there.
was it what was one before the other, or how'd that come about?
I lived there a couple years when I was in my early 20s. So
Oh,
kind of
fancy.
eye-opening experience, and I've been in love with Italy ever since.
Did you move there because you loved Italy, or did you move there because you're like, I'm going to go here and study a bunch of art?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of all of that that went into it. That part of it was kind of in my early 20s. So that's a program that a lot of young people do here in Utah.
Okay.
And so I got lucky, that I got picked to go to Italy. I didn't actually choose it, but it was one of the best things that ever, it was like a gift to be able to put it and study art there. And so I've studied abroad there, even after and visited many times. And, I'm planning this spring to see a part of the country I've never seen before, which is, the South, like Sicily area. It's funny. I had a lot of lingering fear because when I first went to Italy, it was back in the mid '90s, and there was a lot about the mafia still. I mean, there's a lot more power.
Yeah.
That was in with the mafia. Now it's a little bit. It's just a much safer place down there, and a lot fewer issues. And for the most part, as long as you're not doing anything crazy, you'll be totally fine.
Yeah, you don't touch their money; they leave you alone for the most part, right?
Yeah, totally.
There's because when we were in Rome and stuff, our Airbnb host was like, they're telling us, my cousin and me, all about kind of some stuff, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, they're still here. I'm just like, okay, but he was telling us stuff like, they put all their money into like laundry services and all sorts of like businesses, right? But then you watch something like Sopranos, and they got like deli and laundry services and stuff. I'm like, he was just, it's not like, I don't feel any better about this, like just don't mess with the wrong people, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, they still do some other things rather well, but
let's not talk about it because I like my feet the way they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Well, first and foremost, I was going to talk about your art because I see behind you there some of the sci-fi pieces that you bring. I think the first time I met you was at LuxCon, and one year I'm going to get one of those pieces. Like I could have had one last year. I usually go and look at Bryan's work first, and it's usually gone. Like it's like the drug of choice. It's gone so fast. It's like, damn it. And then last year's LuxCon, I was like, I literally beelined it to where you normally are, behind Scott Fisher, and you weren't there. And I should have been like, I'm friends with this guy. I can just message him and ask him if he's here. But you weren't there, so I thought, he didn't show up this year. And then by the time I found him, you were on the second floor, I think. Yeah. We were all sold out. I was like, God damn it. And you have sent me some stuff on the side, but honestly, like, I like to pick the piece as I see it, sometimes. Like, we were talking about it before we went live, like your work and in my work, I think it has a little bit of that. You have to like see it, and then you have to like step back and really look at it.
Totally.
It's hard to like, my stuff, it looks okay online, but sometimes people, like at shows, I could tell people like take a minute and they're like, I don't see what it is. And I'm like, step back. Take a couple steps.
I was gonna say your stuff always looks really good when it's in metal prints, Alan. Like that is definitely like something that you got to see it in person to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I did a show last weekend and I had all these people who were just like, you know, look, I get this response from people all the time and I love it, which is like, oh, we can see you from like down there. And they're like,
Yeah.
you're just like glowing. And I'm just like, yeah, that's the point, you know? But then I'm not really trying to like attract you with that. I want you to actually appreciate the art too. So it's kind of nice when they like what they see as they get closer.
And we were kind of talking about this a little earlier, but like that's something I always appreciate about like really like you guys that work with more abstract strokes, because like what you were saying, Brian, like seeing it online, it's you kind of get it, but it's not nearly the same as like when you get to see it in person. You can get forward, get up close, and then everything just kind of becomes like all abstract strokes everywhere, and then you can step back and watch it all pull together like right before your eyes. And it's not the same when you're like, you know, like a command minus a command plus is zooming out.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, just that, I really feel like the art, you know, we see so much online and it's really, we can't truly appreciate it unless we kind of show up and kind of come to these events and see the work in person, really see what it can do for you. You know, I also had that experience even with somebody that paints super tight, and that I was down in Laguna Beach, California, Southern California, last week, and saw a Sid Mead exhibition.
Oh,
you know,
you
kind
lucky.
Oh,
I'm jealous.
and even though I went to his house, had dinner with him and everything.
Get out of here.
And but he was so reluctant to show me anything. It was like, come on, I know you got drawers full of gouache paintings, and I don't know, it was just so funny that he was like that. But so this was a real deep dive, kind of for one of the first times where I've really seen a large collection of his gouache paintings, and to actually get your nose on it to see how he creates the effect of like chrome, for instance. You know, of the chrome, or the way he'll create a highlight, and even some of the just really fine details, you know, drilling down. And even, you know, I was trying to take some, you know, photos, of course, like we all do, but just doesn't do it justice, even that, when you
you have to like see it in person.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I'm super jealous that not only you get to see that exhibit, but you also get to have dinner with the guy. That's
well, one thing that struck me is this guy is super smart. He, you know, when he designs something, he knows, even
it's
if
very
it's
technical.
Yeah, oh, super technical, where he knows what the seat material should be made out of. He knows, you know, the type of paint job that should go on the chrome car, or whatever, and and the exact scale of what things are. You know, he just
was he like an engineer or something?
You know, that's
I was gonna say he designed cars, didn't he, originally?
That would be it.
He was an industrial designer, you know, in every sense. But you know, he was industrial designer plus. You know, he had all these other superpowers that were, you know, he chose to be called you know, instead of an industrial designer, you know, a visual futurist, and he, you know, he owned every name.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did all the stuff in like Blade Runner and what's the other movie? Tron. Yeah.
Dude, I think he also contributed a design for the Star Trek movie, if I remember right.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that guy should be used for everything that has to do with
it was like a very radical enterprise that he designed. Like, it was not nearly as many flowing lines. It was much more like angular.
Every time I hear
like very imposing.
Tron, I remember when I was in art school, I met I don't remember his name. He was like the lead, maybe artistic designer or whatever. He designed like the suits and stuff, and he was telling us about how if you watched the original Tron, like parts of the movie, the suits look like they're super glowy and they're lit up, and then parts of the movie they look like they're like half kind of lit up. And he was telling us how they had hired, I believe it was a Korean company that went through and would like draw the glow in, right? And so the scenes that are super glowy is where they had the budget. And then the scenes where it's not super glowy, it's where the budget ran out. And they had to change the designs of the suits to like these hoses of colors. Oh. And then they would shine a light on them. And then the light would reflect. And that was the solution, basically, right? And I was like, you wouldn't really not notice it unless somebody told you. But once you know that information, you like can't not see it now. When I see the movie now, I'm just like, that's cool. I know why that happened. He was also telling us about how like he also worked on the opening sequence. He worked on a lot of Blade Runner stuff. Like the opening sequence is Chicago with like I think he described it as cardboard cut out on a camera lens and then created the shapes of those cities, like the opening like horizon line. And I was just like, oh, cool, silly things that you don't think about.
Those practical effects, and in a lot of ways, at least my love of science fiction is kind of the 70s and 80s practical effects and designs and just the look of, not to say, I don't want to downgrade the digital stuff. I mean, that certainly has its, it's obviously it's where we're at, and there's so many more things we can do with it. But there's something I do love about, it's like with Yoda as a puppet, or Yoda as digital character. There is something about the old practical effects they're really cool, and I kind of, with some of my work, is just kind of a nod to, like the John Berkeys, the Sid Meads, and guys like that just I still go back to and think, the world of those guys. They're just so amazing. Ralph McQuarrie.
There's a good one.
So awesome.
You were there the year John Harris was at LuxCon, I think, right? Did you get a chance to like?
Yeah. Oh yeah, John. Well, I should throw John Harris in there as well, and it's been fun. I've had a little bit of relationship with him since we met.
I'm so jealous of your friends. I got to sit down with him for a portfolio review, and that was like the highlight of my LuxCon. He came by, my booth, and he's a huge influence on my work. So like when I said that to him, he was just like, he's like, I was like talking to him about how I want to learn how to paint like him, and he's like, why? He's like, you're already doing this thing digitally. Why would you want to go backwards? Basically, he was like, if this existed for me when I was younger, I would have just done it this way, And then I sat down with him for like 45 minutes or like an hour for a portfolio review. I didn't think he'd actually have time, but I own one original from him. I was like, there's no way I can like not leave without buying, because I was like, I don't know when I'm going to see that guy ever again. But apparently Brian's having dinner with him like on every Friday. That's cool. It's cool that you have like this love of sci-fi, and then you get to also be friends with all it's kind of a cool feeling, like to be able to actually physically hang out and talk to your art heroes, I guess. Like your work speaks to me because I love science. You don't do a lot of science fiction except for LuxCon, I think.
That is true. I do it, here and there because I'm doing a lot of fine art type of things, traditional, that pays the bills for the most part. But I have this strong passion for, the science fiction things, and I do, it's something that I'm going to continue to do throughout my life. And so it's, it's an important part of my initial love of art as a kid, and wanting, like I said, these movies of the 70s and 80s are such a big impact that of my desire to get into art in the first place, that I feel that I'm always going to want to create that, and that be a part of the repertoire of my work.
And it's also nice you travel a ton, because I see you do a lot of plein air painting, which is I'm no good at that. But, it's just not I can't paint under that kind of pressure, I think is what it is.
Yeah, it is a muscle, kind of like, it's like a sport. It's almost like an Olympic sport in some ways. And I did a bunch of competitions, probably like 100 competitions where, you go for a week, just fly in, stamp your canvases to make sure you're not cheating, and then you paint the whole week, and then have a show at the end of the week. And that's how I kind of started my career.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've done it, and that informs my science fiction work. The atmospheres, the light and shadow, and all the textures and things like that, all come from my love of painting outdoors and environments and things like that. So what I've tried to do is marry some of the things that what I love about those 70s movies with what I've learned in plein air, and find something that's kind of unique. And maybe that's the response in the LuxCon, is that I'm an outsider, in a lot
I mean, I think
I married something that's kind of different. It's kind of got a different vibe, a different texture than maybe what some of the other people are doing. Not to diminish anything that everybody else is doing, but I am kind of an outsider in that way.
No, it totally stands out in there, right? Because a lot of, I think a lot of stuff there is fantasy based, and then people like yourself or myself come in with sci-fi stuff, and it's different.
And you can also kind of sometimes develop like a tunnel vision if you start in that space. Then it's kind of hard to like branch out and be like, oh, like I can kind of do these things. So
I feel like
I kind of get it, because like when someone comes from the outside and you're like, wow, what is this stuff?
That's exactly what I said.
It's like a totally different flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm curious if you showed up with some of your sci-fi stuff on one wall and then, your plein air paintings on another wall. I guarantee they'd still just move.
And somebody said that at the end of the show, like, why don't you bring some of your traditional stuff? And my first thought was, well, I didn't know that was allowed.
Oh yeah,
but
sure.
Then I did see some other people, with some more traditional stuff, and certainly that could work. I mean, one thing that has influenced I do a lot of cityscapes too. I love painting like San Francisco, and Los Angeles, New York, Europe, big cities in Europe too, and some of the science fiction things and the street scenes. There's a lot of commonality there, with the way I kind of handle the paint and stuff like that. So I definitely should do that. Next time, bring a little bit more of a, kind of the whole variety of what I do.
You should maybe keep them aside until all the sci-fi stuff sells, and then put out the other stuff. By the way, I also have this stuff that is a plan.
Bryan After Dark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that's sold. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, I would absolutely love to see some of your cityscapes in person, because like I saw on your site City Towers, and it's like, man, like I just seen it on the webpage. And I'm like, yeah, if I saw it in person, I know that would be a favorite of mine, just to witness it.
Well, and to see, you can get a sense of the scale of it.
Yeah,
it's important. And I even do pieces that are much larger that I don't necessarily bring to LuxCon, just because it's a tough trip to bring some really large works. But something's also really fun about when you get it really, large scale, and then you can really see the big mark making that goes on to, and kind of create this reality, and also being painterly at the same time. And that's one of the things I find that is the hardest thing to do about painting, is to make it look incredibly convincing, but do it in as few fresh brush strokes as possible. Say more with less.
Yeah.
Kind of I'm at with my work and what I'm about, what I'm after.
So yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. Like you mentioned something there. So when you work, depending on your scale, do you actually scale up and down your mark making as well to fit within that, or do you just kind of keep it consistent throughout it?
Yeah, if you you can't get away with the same brushwork on a small piece as you can with the large piece. And
yeah,
in plein air painting, there's a lot of artists that are really good at doing little small works, but once they get bigger, they fall apart. And so, when I was just getting started, stuff like that, I was one of those artists that I could get a nice, sweet little gem of a piece small, but when it came to scaling it up, just couldn't quite do it. So I've actually consciously worked on that, specifically of how to convey similar things at a larger scale. It's much, much harder to do that, to convey or to keep energy in the painting and in the brushwork at scale. So that's a lot of my efforts these days are, painting larger and larger. I mean, I still do a fair number of, mid-sized to smaller pieces. But, some of these, the challenge that I'm looking for right now is painting really large scale stuff.
Do your tools get more, excuse me, just also caught a spit in me. Do your tools get more unconventional the larger you go? Like, do you kind of fall back on like more like house painting supplies and that kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You gotta be, creative with the the huge
the
knives, big brushes, big knives, rollers and squeegees and things that kind of create, and even tools that I've kind of made, to use of plastics and rubber and different things to get some of the different textures and stuff like that.
It's cool when you see all the extra little, like I think it was Vanessa Lemon. She has like the little spatulas you use like for like cake and stuff.
Oh yeah, the Martha Stewart one.
Yeah. She just has a variety of these things, and it's cool to be like, oh, that's a different tool that's not really designed for painting, but it's just found a way to use it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, it's just like in Photoshop, you've got so many different brushes and textures and things to utilize, and and a lot of them are designed after something in the real world, and so that's using some of those things, even like branches with leaves on it. You can get some textures, dragging that across, and sky's the limit.
Dragon skin off that.
Yeah.
So I also I asked you to list some hobbies, which I've got a list here, but one of the things you talked about was product design. So I was gonna approach. You have a whole plein air system designed for artists, Strata, right?
Yeah, Strata. Yeah, and it's something that's been a lot of fun to go through that whole process. As a kid, I was really interested in origami and folding things up, and so a lot of the principles of design, the way we've designed Strata is folded metal, just like you would fold kind of origami, and that's how sheet aluminum has been a kind of the medium that I use for making all these products, and it's been great because it's lightweight, it's durable, it's thin profile, and a lot of people have responded to that. Just having something a lot smaller profile that easily slides into a backpack,
right?
Also something that's super durable, because wood can fall apart after time,
and it's heavy.
It's heavy,
bulky. It's got to be thicker, right? So all those things. I just realized that, the basic thought was, I've got this wood easel here. If Steve Jobs or Johnny Ive, his, chief industrial designer, were to make an easel, what would they do? And that's where I kind of pared things down and made it more kind of laptop looking and all of that. And
so cool.
It's fun.
I was gonna ask, you obviously have an appreciation for like product designers and product illustrators and all that, and like same thing with like the Strata easel. Do you have a background in product design, or is it just always been something that you've been kind of interested in but never like professionally delved into until recently with the Strata system?
Yeah, it's really something that it just had kind of a side passion. Artists always have their hobbies and things like that, and it started as my hobby to make the ultimate easel for myself, and so that's all it was making it. And then I had this easel, a one-off basically, and I presented at what's called a Plein Air Convention. There's a convention.
Conventions for that? I think there's a convention for everything. I don't know. I shouldn't be shocked by that.
Yeah, so there's a ton of landscape painters around the world, and so I did a demo on the stage, and then a lot of people were asking about it, and so that's kind of accidentally started in a way. I wasn't necessarily planning on going off in that direction, but I was just trying to solve my own problem, because I would travel a lot. And one time, actually, I was in Italy, and the box got destroyed by TSA. Got thrown around.
TSA. Wow.
Yeah, and so I was like a bunch of duct tape and stuff to kind of keep my easel together. This is pre-Strata, my wood easel, to keep it together while I was there. And I was there for a whole month, and it was just super annoying. And so that's when I came home. I'm like, I'm gonna make something that's bulletproof, and that's kind of how it all started. So I learned it from the ground up on how to. But I've been making things my whole life. As artists like to do, work with their hands.
Yeah.
And so got down in the wood shop and started prototyping and stuff like that. And then found a metal manufacturer and just went through all that, the process of patents and all those things. It was kind of an education going along. And if I knew how much work it would have been, I don't know if I would have.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, it's a ton of work and a lot of risk. You know, I put my life savings at the time into the first run to get it going, and I think this was close to.
This is like pre-Kickstarter, I think, right?
Yeah, this is like 2010, 11,
Okay.
10 or 11.
Yeah.
We're just a couple years out of the recession, so
Yeah.
it was a nail biter to decide to do this, because when you do a run, when you work with a manufacturer, it's not like if I was doing it out of wood, and that's why a lot of these products are made out of wood, because a lot of small companies, wood's cheaper, you don't have to do a large run.
Sure.
You know, but the route I went was with a manufacturer, and so you have to do a certain number or else they won't even talk to you. So it's, it was it was a risk, but at the end of the day, it was, it was one that paid off. It easily could have tanked, but I was willing to kind of go the distance with it all.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot with that, because, the first product I put out there wasn't that great. It had a lot of issues, and I remember somebody said about it, is like, because this concept of having like this aluminum box, they're like, the only thing that looks like it's good for is warming tortillas, and lady from Arizona. So that was kind of like, oh man, is this gonna go anywhere? But we persevered, and we told that lady, well, if she buys one, we'll throw in a pair of oven mitts.
You said her name was Peggy from Arizona. Peggy, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, totally. So there was just kind of like, stick to it and keep it, next run, make it a little bit better and a little bit better. And that's really, just how artists, people say, how did you get started and stuff like that? Well, you just, throw spaghetti to the wall, see what sticks, and then make it a little bit better each time.
It's the easiest way to learn, right? You have an idea, you try to make it happen, and if it fails, it fails. Hopefully you're not living in a cardboard box at the end of that event.
Right.
And then, if you plan nowadays, if you can, luckily nowadays we have something like Kickstarter, so you can plan and then you can kickstart it. And if it fails, you're like, well, that was not necessarily a bad idea. It just didn't work at that moment. So you just got to replan and relaunch. And if you do it like 3 or 4 times and it fails, something's wrong.
It's wrong.
But, I find, Kickstarter, if you didn't have that, then you have that, you are taking a huge risk, but you can take that risk now, which is kind of convenient for people. That's why there's so many projects out there now, right? Like everyone's got an idea for everything. And like, sometimes it's, you're like, this is the same thing I've seen, but what makes this one better? And it might be cost. It might be something specific. Like,
it's kind of cool.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I love the fact that, like, my neighbors, not everybody, but the neighbors here and there, they have something going on, a side hustle in their garage, and you never know who's going to take off. And I think it's fun to have that thing that's going on in your garage that, there's a passion project or two that is there. And that's something I think that makes a creative career very interesting and dynamic.
It'll probably keep you sane too, right? Because you're not 100% like doing just art all day. You've got like this. In your case, it's kind of smart too. You did something that's not just, you didn't like design a cooler, or like some random thing that won't help you with the business. You designed something that you wanted first. That's what people tell you, right? Make something you want, and then other people can appreciate the passion behind that, right? Like,
totally.
So
and then it's easy to advocate, right? It goes with, so the businesses that I've started or co-founded or whatever, they've all been related to the arts, obviously, and co-founded an art school as well. So a big part of it is like, you have this equipment, and then people were asking, well, teaching workshops, and I've been really busy to be able to do much teaching, and so I started an art school as well to kind of help with that, and recorded all these tutorials and things. So we have Sentient Academy is now art school that we have, and we have about 40 artists that have their lessons and things on there, and that's it's fun to just see all the areas where you can kind of help.
So that's your other side project. You started online courses. That's cool.
Yeah, basically during the pandemic, the last 2 years, we have this school now. It was all online, during the pandemic. Now we have a physical location, and people can come teach workshops, and we do art shows. Wow. And all this stuff, and so it's been great.
That sounds you're busy. You're a busy guy.
Yeah.
So are you okay? So I got a question regarding any of these projects that you're doing. I assume you set them up and you have somebody helping you manage them all, because there's no way if you're managing all this by yourself, you're gonna be going crazy soon.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah. So, for instance, it was heavy lifting for a little while, when getting this kind of the academy off the ground. But I did it. I co-founded with a guy that he's a tech guru, and he's really good at. I'm more the visionary type. Bring everybody together, and just kind of give the whole direction of the school, the visual look of it, the curriculum, things like that. But at the end of the day, who's going to do kind of the behind the scenes work and all of the management of the different artists and things like that. And that's where I've heavily relied on other people to take care of all that. Now I've kind of, once I've got that kind of launched, I've taken a back seat to things and kind of let people do what they need to do. And that's the same thing with the Strata company as well. As I manage the really tough problems. I get the really hairy stuff, and we've had some supply chain things that have been really hairy. Sure. But for the most part, day to day, I'm not managing so much. There's other people in charge of that kind of stuff.
See, that's where it's at, because then you can focus on your artwork, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I've really realized is that I can't, you can't be an expert at everything. It's impossible. So I've actually been looking for someone that could build 3-dimensional models for me as help, even just rough.
I got people who can do that for you. Andrew can do that for you. I was going to say, this guy can do it right here. He's actually awesome. Really good at 3D.
Yeah, well, we'll have to talk about that, because just even with the spaceships and things like that, I realize just time-wise, I don't have enough time to even just put in several shapes and stuff like that in Blender.
This is exactly what we're talking about. Andrew and I were talking about kit bashing ships together for me, and then I can paint over them.
We've been trying to. Yeah, we've been actually trying to figure that out for Allen.
Let's just get Bryan on a call with us when we do it. Because what we're doing is I'm trying to learn I've been learning Blender. And then what I did was initially I bought I have a friend who gave me a bunch of kit bashes. And then what I did was I took the ships apart. It's like random parts, like cities and engines and mechanics. And then what we did was we built a spaceship out of it. And the idea was to bring that into Photoshop, or in your case, you can print it out, or at least you have something you can visually reference. Yeah. Because I have a hard time with, one of my biggest crutches is perspective, and some depth. I feel like the 3D model would help me kind of get those angles better. In my case, it's Photoshop, so I can easily just bring it into Photoshop and lasso tool over it if I have to, just to get it starting point. So Andrew and I have been talking. We ran out of time. We've been really busy, but that's something we started doing about 2 or 3 months ago.
I think that there's so much that can be. It just makes us a better starting point instead of doing it from scratch. It helps things. It kind of speeds up the process.
You get multiple angles too, right? Like the piece behind you. If you were to 3D build that, you can get you can get that angle. You can get a close up angle. You can get I remember one of the cool side note. One of the cool things I think about your sci-fi work is you can sometimes change. I remember Ben Hill rotated one of your paintings at AllenPanakal, and it sold right away. And I was like, I can't believe that shit worked. But because we were all just staring at it, and we're like, that's cool. And Ben's like, whoop, and then it sold 5 minutes later. So
then the story became different,
right?
And the guy who bought it could imagine certain things about it that he couldn't in the other orientation, and that's fun. That's what I love about abstraction too. And science fiction is, which there's this concept of up or down, and it's turned on its head or rotated or on its side when it comes to science fiction. And because which way is up? There's
really space, man.
There's this thing, right?
like we're playing Ender's Game or something, right?
Yeah,
Enemies gate is down.
Yeah, totally.
Which way is down? So I also want to touch base on, you mentioned archaeology, because you don't really paint a lot of archaeological that's what I'm saying, archaeological structures. You paint a lot of cities. I've seen you paint a lot of water and like boats, and like I believe you're in Asia probably when you're and then, but I don't see a lot of archaeology in your paintings.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mood thing, but I do feel like at least my science fiction work it's always, it has a patina to it.
Yep.
It always kind of run down. There's something about the idea that maybe this is future, but it's a future that has been, it went through its glory days and now it's, run down. Just like the whole Star Wars vibe where
totally
things have, it's kind of junk. It's kind of dilapidated and junky and stuff like that. And I love the patina of the old world. That's one thing that Italy is, that influence of, you got 20 layers of stucco on a door and the way it's been peeling off.
Yeah.
And, all that stuff. I do want to visit a city in Italy that has since been abandoned in southern Italy. And I'm looking forward to doing some paintings of that. And that's really where my science fiction, fantasy, and
what city is that?
Work. It's called Krakow.
Oh, okay. Can you go in
there? You can with a hard hat and a tour guide.
Okay.
Apparently.
I was gonna be like, I don't think they're gonna just let you walk through there.
Oh no, which I would love. Like, I want to forget the tour guide. I want to just go and.
I bet if you paid the right tour guide, you could. But the problem is, you might end up in a horror movie situation where you're like, the tour guide's dead. I don't have the keys to the car. What did you think? So I get exactly what you're talking about, because when I was in Rome, I remember like my cousins were like, the Colosseum's awesome, and Vatican City is awesome and all that, and it is. But I liked, like, we would be walking down the streets and you'd see like these old doors with like these old like lion shapes or like lion heads or whatever, and like you could see like the grittiness of just years of it not being maintained at all. If they're just like, fuck it, it's gonna do whatever. And the old statues of like the Caesar basically, right? But they don't really do anything they just let the world handle it essentially, unless and it's got that old feel to it. And then you look up what they actually look like when they're like painted and stuff, and you're like, it kind of looks cool now, like it's some wild colors on them back then, man.
Yeah, totally. And I love that feeling. There's an artist too. His name's I'm going to slaughter his name because he's from Spain, but Tomas Barcelo Castilla.
I'll have to look him up.
He's a sculptor, and he's married classical sculpture and ancient sculpture and science fiction all together, and making some really cool stuff. And to some degree that, and he has these interesting patinas and stuff like that. Although I'm not doing like figures or things like that, I'm more doing environments. There's very much just the similar love of some of those things and how they kind of interact is something I'm interested in. One thing about the ancients and archaeology, like the pyramids, or like you said, even just the Colosseum, which is more modern than ancient maybe, is scale. Scale is such a huge part of those ancient structures that are so cool, and
they're massive, man.
They're huge. Yeah, it's the ambition of these people to, well, I guess
it's Rome, right?
Well, yeah, and make do it right. Although there is a feeling that there was some cooperation even with the Egyptian pyramids, perhaps.
Sure,
people were not enslaved; that they were actually employed to some degree. I don't know, but it's amazing to see those in the old world, in the new world, like down in Mexico, the Teotihuacan and places that are just these massive structures.
Like I want to see those kind of cool things. Like we were in London, and I could have gone and seen Stonehenge. Apparently it was only like a couple hours away, but nobody wanted to go with me. Nobody had any interest in going. And I
That's
was
a
like,
shame because you actually get really close to it.
yeah, and I was like, well, like I even looked up these tours. 'Cause the problem was when I took this trip, I only had so many days in each spot. But I was like, I was even willing to. I was ready to just go by myself and just come back when I come back, right? But then I also edge very much on like nowadays. I feel like I would just do it, but then I was like, I don't really want to do this by myself. This sounds kind of sketchy if I don't come back home. Like I don't know what Stonehenge is like. I might get zapped. Or
No.
I obviously not, but they're like it's like we went to the Louvre and my cousins all wanted to go. We lasted. You can't do that museum in a day. It's so big.
Yeah, it's so big, right?
I was like, I'll come back at night because I wanted to see it at night. But then again, nobody wanted to go with, and I was like, well, I'm not riding the train in Paris by myself. I'm probably gonna get mugged or something, But I should have just sucked it up and went because I would have had some awesome photos in there at night, and now I regret that. But I'll go back someday.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's and some of that stuff. Just the fact that it's made out of stone, for one. Rather than some of the materials that we use.
Right.
I think today there's just an enchantment with that stone and metal, just these raw materials that plastics or other things that we get in the modern materials just don't quite. I mean, they just don't convey the same things. And so I do find a lot of inspiration, even though I don't directly necessarily paint that kind of stuff. Part of it is I think a lot of people, at least in the fine art arena, wouldn't necessarily want to even purchase it.
Right.
There was kind of a time in the 19th century where there was this thing when they were discovering a lot of archaeology, where to paint the Colosseum or the Acropolis, in Greece or something like that would be something you did, right? Because not a lot of people got to go and see it, and
Right.
so it were a postcard basically that you put up. Albert Bierstadt and Thomas Moran and others, they went west and would paint these huge epic landscapes of California and the Rocky Mountains, and they'd bring them back, and they would be like it's almost like a movie. They'd have lines. You'd buy a ticket to go see this painting that conveyed an area that most likely in your lifetime you'd never get to see. So it's a lot different now, right, in terms of that kind of stuff, because everybody's posting their pictures. So I got to do something that's a little bit more.
Yeah, you got to put them in an outside world that doesn't exist.
Yeah, a certain spin on it.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, there's no, like Angkor Wat is a place I've wanted to go visit, and I will at some point. Maybe when COVID seems to kind of settle down in terms of the borders and stuff. I think we're gonna always have it, obviously, but
I don't think it's gonna. Yeah, we don't talk about it.
Yeah. Anyway, just.
I mean, I was gonna bring up that you mentioned that you caught it and you got better.
Yes. So thank goodness everybody else was getting it that I knew, so I was feeling left out. So.
Oh, I don't feel left out at all. Like a couple of my friends here, like their kids started school and they caught it. The kids got it and then they got it, and I had a friend who was like, "Just get it and just get it out of the way." I'm like, no,
no. I really wasn't trying to look for it. I've been actually.
I know. I'm totally messing with you. It's at least you didn't get crazy sick from it, man. I hear some horror stories from it. So
yeah, and I've had the vaccines and stuff like that, so I'm good. But having 4 kids, all going to school, and it's just a matter of time. There's.
Oh, you have 4 kids?
I do, yeah.
I did not know that. That's information I did not have. That's cool. Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people who are catching it are from their kids. It's like kids are, they're like little petri dishes. You're gonna catch something from them.
Yeah, in the best of times they are.
Yeah, in the best of times you get like colds from them from going to school. It's just what happens, I guess. So there's no way.
Yeah, helps your immunity. It helps you be tough, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't talk much about. I mean, some people love to put their kids out there on Facebook and things like that, and I'm not one of those people that love to do that. I think I like to keep my private life.
Your kids are gonna give you shit about that later. Yeah. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's true, man. You don't really talk about your family at all at shows or anything like that. I didn't realize you had married or had kids, so it's.
Yeah. So no, I'm a big family man. That's
cool.
really one of the most important parts of my life. And one of the things too is we, and definitely it comes from me, just this huge love of, like I said, of all these movies and stuff like that. And so fortunately, like all my kids are into it.
That's good.
Like every Book of Boba Fett comes out, or whatever it is, Mandalorian, or if we're watching.
Dude, you're so lucky.
We talk about the concept art. We talk about like there are a couple things in Boba Fett where I'm just like, oh, the direction was.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel that way too.
We have to do we still have to do an episode on the finale of Fett. We're gonna be ranting about that probably next week.
Okay.
But like my kid is just getting into so my kid's 3, and I was like, at what age can I start showing her Star Wars, which is like my first like love, right? I love If anyone knows anything about me, is that I fucking love Star Wars. It's like Fett. Yeah. Sure, there's a bunch of stuff in there I didn't agree with, but I also love the fact that I get to see Fett, and I don't have to argue with people about him being dead. But my kid, I was like, where do I start her? So I started her on, people are starting episode 1, and I was like, I forwarded through Jar Jar right off the bat. I'm like, nope, you're not fucking falling in love with this character, like. And I took her straight to pod racing, and she sat through the whole pod racing sequence. The thing was, I've gotten her books as she was growing up, so she knows like Ahsoka Tano and stuff. She loves Ahsoka, from reading about her. And then I showed her a couple clips here and there. I basically gave her like 1-minute clips of Ahsoka, and then I showed her a little bit of the Mandalorian with Ahsoka, and I showed her a little bit of Clone Wars. So she kind of loves that character, but I don't really. I hate it. I don't hate episode 1. I hate the fact that I have to show her that, because it's like I feel like it just doesn't need to be seen for the rest of the story, right?
I was gonna say you could technically skip it.
Could, but I also feel like there's things in there important for her to see.
No, there's nothing of consequence that happens in episode 1.
I don't know if Filoni would have something different to say to you about that.
I challenge him. Challenge him on that. There's nothing of consequence in episode 1. You could start on episode 2 and be like, okay, here you go. Here's where everything starts.
Sure.
Yeah, it's so funny and it's because we care, right? It's because we care. We want it to be good storytelling, and that's why I'm bagging on. Like my first things that I mentioned Boba Fett, and then I have to start bagging on it immediately. And it's just because I want it to be good. I want to care. I care about it, and that's what Star Wars has done for all of us over the decades. Is that it's really never left us. It kind of grows in its legend, even the older you get.
I mean, like I said, there's moments where you're just like, and there's moments you're like, okay, and then you kind of like forget the moments where you just didn't accept them, because you're just like, I was just happy to see Fett back, like I said, and that's the same way I felt about episode 1, 2, and 3. They're not the greatest films in the world, but I saw all 3 of them at midnight shows when they came out. Yeah. I was happy. What was it? 20 years went by before we got new Star Wars films, so I was just like, this is great. I get to see Star Wars, in the theater, right? Like the last time I saw Star Wars originally when I was around, I think I was 7, and my local theater here played all 3. So like, Return had been out for about a year or 2, or a year maybe, and this local theater did all 3 episodes 4, 5, and 6 in one go. And so me and some of my friends at that time went and saw it, and I was like blown away by it. So it's kind of my kid's kind of showing signs of it. I'm not trying to force anything on her, I guess, but I talk about Star Wars all day. So
I imagine she's going to be a fan. It just can't help it. Just and it's kind of fun to have that family culture, right? And one thing, even just with the stories, we kind of bag on the stories and stuff like that. Visually, I kind of. We all watch movies differently, and I think artists watch it also with like, oh, that is a cool, design of that spaceship, and so all of them, even the prequels and all of that, and with all the issues of the last 3 episodes that came out, I can always find some really cool designs and all of that, and it's so great to have, see on Instagram, people posting when the episode of Boba Fett comes out, their concept art with it. And love being all kind of involved in that and seeing the artists working on it. It's been a lot of fun.
It's kind of fun to see the concept art when you see like designs that were cooler, and then the designs they decide to go with, and you're like, what happened? Right? I'm always curious, like, who made this final call? Because like this design clearly works better, but for some reason, might have been production quality, might have been like budgets and
I was
stuff.
gonna say it's usually a case of like it looks good from that angle only, and the minute you do like a turnaround or something, it falls apart. And you're like, that doesn't work, or it's like a money thing where it's like, this is cool, but this is also gonna be expensive to reproduce for film.
Right. One of the guests watching is asking if Bryan, if you interview Wayne, what do you say his last name? Thiebaud? Theibaud?
Yeah, Wayne Thiebaud. Did I interview him?
That's the question, yeah.
Okay, so, I didn't interview him, but my connection with Wayne Thiebaud. So he's one of the icons of pop art. So he's like, he's not as high up as Andy Warhol, but I would say he's just below Andy Warhol. He just died. He was like 101 when he died. I was fortunate to meet him. He came to one of my shows a couple of years ago and bought one of my pieces, and so it's just a huge honor to be just even rub shoulders with some guy like that who's just an absolute icon in American art. One of the major figures. Like he's going to be in every art history book, from here on out. That's kind of that's how big his impact is, and so he's always had an influence on the abstract side of kind of the balance between realism and abstraction. He's kind of danced that line, and so he's always had an influence on my work, and be able to meet one of your heroes like that, like meeting Sid Mead or some of these other guys. It's really quite amazing to have that opportunity.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at his work. I know this stuff.
Yeah. And he said one thing he said to me, I've been painting, like 70 plus years, and he's like, there's nothing harder than making a work of art. There is nothing harder in life than making a good work of art. And it was just nice to have that validation, because a lot of people, you meet just when you contact them on the, just in your daily interactions, right? Grocery store or your neighbor or whatever. If they're not involved in this kind of process of making art, and 99% of them aren't,
right?
You just don't get that validation all that much. There's this kind of perception that you, kind of just make it happen. And I'll tell you what, as much as I've been painting, for many years, 30 something years painting, I still, it's as hard as it ever was, because it doesn't matter how good you get, you're always pushing the next thing and trying to figure out the next piece, or add complexity or difficulty. And so I never feel like I've got it all figured out.
I mean, I think the only people that can really understand, I think, our like struggle, if you want to call it struggle, is another artist, right? They're like right. We're all part of, a bunch of us are in a Discord group called the Rusty Skillet, which is basically Scott Fisher's students, essentially. Started out that way. But like, I think we all kind of like lean on each other when we create art, because it's like I can talk to my wife about art all day and she'll be supportive at the level she could be supportive, but at the end of the day, she can't understand what I'm dealing with, trying to just write a story or create a piece of art, right? It's like they try, to their credit, like your friends try, but they can't unless they're artists. I'm not trying to be a dick about it. It's just the truth of the matter,
You start talking about values and edges and turning the form, or how, overlap, or, the combination of all those things and textures and stuff like that. And really tripping out or geeking out about something, or color combinations, or value patterns, and it's just, you have to do it with other people in the know to kind of talk at that level where you're saying,
like when you see I was watching I'm gonna say The Force Awakens, right? That just opening sequence. There's a sequence there where she's riding along the desert, and they show Rey. They show the Tatooine, or I'm sorry, she's on Jakku, right, or whatever. And then a fallen Star Destroyer, and I'm like, oh, cool, that's a perfect shot, And I'm like, oh yeah, you could freeze it right there. Or Arcane, for example, like you can freeze that show, you can pause it anywhere, and like everything's a perfect shot. It's insane how perfect that series is. If you haven't seen Arcane, man.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I I was just watching the first episode this morning because I'm like, I got to do this. People keep telling me how awesome this is, and yeah, it hasn't disappointed so far. Just the visual direction of it. I love that's one thing I was telling my kids as watching, or at least my oldest son. It's a little too gritty for my youngers, but anyway, just that there's no curves in it. Everything is straight lines.
Yeah.
Even the circular things are all straight line, and just pointing out things how they're doing the visual direction, the color saturation that they're doing, the atmospheres that they're creating, the lighting, the complex lighting and subtleties of when they pass through warm and cool lights, or dramatic green versus red light, and what that does to the figure, and the highlights in the eyes and how they use that for specific expressions, and just even the hair, how they stylize, how they chose to, where does it get divided on the head, and how big are those shapes, and how do they, break that up to, create a compelling, interesting shape. And there's just level upon level that has gone into it. That's really fun to see. They've done a great job with it.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's probably one of the most perfect shows I've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
I got to revisit it. I started watching the first episode, and then I had to stop.
Oh, it's so good.
I haven't picked it back up yet.
Yeah, it's really amazing. One of the shows that kind of blew my mind, a couple of them in terms of animation. One was Klaus, which is it's kind of,
yeah.
The lighting direction in there is absolutely insane, and also the simplicity of the animation in combination with the innovative lighting design is absolutely brilliant. And then Spider-Verse, of course.
Oh yeah.
Textures, the stylizations they threw in there was just a leap forward in the possibilities, and I think Arcane too has, in its own unique way, just that just these great combinations of fine art and visual art and illustration and concept art all blended together, and it just makes it so great.
I mean, I like when like Spider-Verse and Arcane are examples of like when testing this new tech, right, and trying different things. And I remember back in the day when they made movies like You remember Scanner Darkly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where it's
like
rotoscoped and everything.
Rotoscoped, right? And I remember reading articles about how like 1 second of that movie took like 72 hours to render or something, and it ate up like a whole server farm of space. And now you can just do it really much quicker, obviously. But I was like, to me that kind of stuff's cool because somebody's trying something new, and then visually we get this insane looking movie. And then in the case of like Spider-Verse and Arcane, technology's advanced so much you don't have to do rotoscoping. You can actually just create the 3D images. Like Spider-Verse, I think is like 3D, and then it's like kind of smashed down into 2D, right?
It's still 3D. They had some proprietary tech that allowed them to use some 2D elements within
That's
it.
Cool.
They're actually pretty much going forward. This is Sony. They're going forward with being basically their base for all their animated movies, like Mitchell and the Machines, Mitchell versus the Machines,
which was awesome.
that was Sony Animation as well, and it's built on the same rendering engine same.
It works, software. So why keep doing it until you come up with something different, not necessarily cooler. It's just got to be different.
Even adding some of the Instagram, the live camera shots, not even animation into it.
Yeah,
was great. With the monkey,
Yeah. It throws you, right? You're like, oh, that's cool.
Super cool. And I just love that. And that's why, you look at, like Studio Ghibli, how different that they do things. And that was kind of a revelation to me, as well as like, storytelling can be totally different from the Disney format. It doesn't have to be
right.
This, princess, coming of age or whatever story over and over again, that something totally unique. And that was eye-opening. So there are moments through that animation have really also been kind of this inspiring place.
I was lucky enough where nobody made me watch a lot of Disney movies growing up. I had cousins who liked them, but I had cousins who loved anime. So like I grew up watching things like Lotus Wars and Fist of the North Star and Akira, like all the violent shit, like Robotech, which is not called Robotech everywhere, but only in the US.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things I grew up watching, and then Disney was like secondary to all that. So I remember like Disney just didn't do it for me, man. Like it wasn't enough. But then when Pixar came out, I was like, this is different. This has got a cool vibe to it, and they've gotten much better. Pixar's got a cookie cutter formula though, so. But I like Studio Ghibli a lot.
And I kind of tend to. I like the stuff that's flatter, personally. Even like the Book of Kells or Song of the Sea. I don't know if you those. I love the stylization there, and just the fact that we can make everything round and smooth doesn't mean we need to.
Right.
And that's one of the things I like to do again with the abstraction and celebrate flatness. We don't have to make everything. I know, I can make things round and dimensional. I can do that, but there's something really great about making things graphic and flat. And again, going back to Spider-Verse, that's something that was really compelling to me, is that some things just went totally flat in these three different spaces, and I just absolutely love that.
I mean, you can still get
that kind of.
Oh, go ahead, Andrew. I'm sorry. No, go ahead, man.
I was gonna say, like, that kind of philosophy always reminds me of David Lynch when he made his movie A Straight Story, because for the longest time everyone always said to David Lynch, oh, like he can do all these weird movies, like he can't do a normal movie. And then just one day he's like, well, I made a normal movie, straightforward, totally nothing. It's the least Lynchian movie ever. And it basically is just him saying, like, look, I can do this. I don't want to do it, though.
Right.
This isn't interesting to me.
Yeah.
I much rather would explore all these other things because I already know how to do this.
Yeah. Well, I feel that same pull, too, because some of the things, like in some of my science fiction things, I could add an element that would be more sellable, like even like a figure or something a little bit more obvious into the work. And I know that it could sell more, but some part of me wants, honestly, I hold back to just wanting the pure abstraction.
Yeah, keeping it open is good.
Yeah, and so and I know that only like there's a smaller audience for that kind of stuff, but like Lynch, his vibe with it, wanting to do stuff that's just a little bit more interesting. Like, now this is what's really interesting me. Maybe not necessarily so much of an obvious narrative. I like this ambiguous, more poetic narrative that may be a little more challenging to some people, has a few more atonal harmonies to it, and I'm okay with that. I like to sit in that space. So, it's not for everybody, though.
No, I mean, it's also tough to hold back, right? Like, I've had people tell me, like, put some like birds in your pieces so you get perspective, or put a ship in here so people can understand.
That's exactly right. The bird,
the bird.
Yeah. Right. Or put a like, I have a piece where I got a little dude in the front, and then the ship going around the corner, and people love it. But I kind of wish I didn't put the little guy in there, because now now it doesn't seem as large of a space, right? Because the little dude's like, I can make him tiny. But if I just left him out,
though.
Yeah, if I just took him out, he's a stick man, right? He's just standing there doing nothing. If I just left him out altogether, it would have probably just been fine, So sometimes, like, I get what you're saying with your pieces, like, you just leave it open so people can like form their own thoughts on what they're seeing. That's the whole point of like abstract,
Yeah, totally. And so, have either of you read the book Rendezvous with Rama?
No,
it's okay if you have. It's an
older. I haven't, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
So Denis, I'm going to slaughter his name, right? Villeneuve or whatever. The just did Dune.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Villeneuve.
Yeah. That's the next one he wants to make, right?
That's the next one he wants to make. And so, if you haven't read it, this, Alan, especially, with your work, and just. It's so great because it is an abstract. In a lot of ways, it's all about an abstract concept, and it's all about scale. And I love how ambiguous it was. It doesn't have this like Disney ending at all. It's hard. It's also kind of hard science fiction.
I like hard sci-fi.
Yeah, there's so many great things. There's some moments in there that is just like, I felt like when I read it is like, yeah, this is what I'm trying to do with my art. What he's trying to do with this book is what I'm trying to do
Is
with,
it
with my
a graphic novel or just a
Oh, it's a novel. So,
novel? Okay.
Arthur C. Clarke was actually influential, and after reading this, I helped me understand
I'll look it up.
John Harris a lot more.
Okay.
Oh,
interesting.
So John always talks about scale and an infinite space and things like that. And if you know Arthur C. Clarke, he lived in Sri Lanka, and I think was influenced by some like the Vedas and the kind of cosmic theologies and things that are in that land. And I think that's why it's called Rama. Rama is an important god in Hindu theology, and anyway, you can see that influence on Harris and his holding back on having too much narrative and having those atmospheric interpretive sort of elements to it. And that's why I respond to it a lot.
I mean,
the John Berkey abstraction and not trying to explain that this ship has to make sense. It's actually just awesome, right? It's just all about
So that's the thing I try to explain to people sometimes. I got into a discussion once with another artist about how they were like, you need to study the dynamics of this airplane. You need to figure out how this thing would actually fit in real space. And I'm like, it's a spaceship. Like it doesn't have to like
whatever it wants to be.
It could be whatever it wants to be.
I would love for someone to say that to like a Chris Voss spacecraft,
right?
Because those things make no damn sense.
Yeah, like if you look at if you get real tight on a Berkey piece, the ship itself has like tons of little like knickknacks happening to it that make zero sense to the design of it. But if you zoom back from it, it just looks like a cool spaceship, right? And you're just like, it works, and that's the whole point. That's the whole point of science fiction, man. It could do anything. It could look like a giant banana in space with a satellite dish coming out of it, right? But it works. And so I was trying to explain that, and this person was trying to tell me how I should study aerodynamics and how wings work and stuff. And the problem was, I initially was like, well, at first I was like, oh yeah, you're right. But then as I started studying it, I was like, I don't need to know how this works. It doesn't matter. I could put a photon engine in the thing and it flies.
Like I was gonna say, did that person never hear the Borg cube?
I'm not gonna.
The reason there's the Borg cube, because it was totally
it's a square in space,
right? Spaceship design, yeah.
Well, I actually argued with the Falcon. I said, look at the Falcon. It's basically inspired from a dude taking a bite out of a Big Mac, I think, right? And it gave him that hamburger shape. That it looks like a hamburger with a bite taken out of it if you really look at it, and it's just a disc and it flies in space. It's the fastest ship in the galaxy.
Right. Well, and I think John Berkey even says that in one of his books, where if you try and explain everything too much, it can also inhibit your creativity to make something kind of new and unique. And I love Berkey has some of his more traditional looking spaceship type stuff for certain type projects, but then he has stuff that's really quite really abstract, really personal pieces where edges, you're like, where does this spaceship even stop and start? I don't know.
Right, it just fades off, right?
Yeah, and they're beautiful, right? And they're beautiful. They inspire. They bring awe. They bring wonder, and that's enough. I mean, that's enough for me.
Right, and that's what
when you explain things too much, then it brings it down to a lower level.
You don't need I understand the need to if we were to look at, say, Star Trek as an example. I understand the need to put all the windows in there and show the engine and all that, because it's actually show, and the ship has to have sort of a function that people need to be able to live in that space, right? But in a painting, you can have them live in any space they want.
Even then, though, something with Star Trek, a lot of the spaceship designs, if you ever see the models of them, they have all these random panels painted on them. They don't mean anything at all, and the model makers are we literally have no meaning for these. These are just to catch the eye in the lens.
Yep.
Well, there's no purpose beyond that, truly.
Yeah, it doesn't look cool. You know, it doesn't look awesome.
Yeah.
It's kit bashing at its finest, right? Kit bashing is like so Eli talks about kit bashing with me, and him and I started doing kit bashes on the side, and I've been working on like a spaceship on the side to build out. You know, obviously 3D exists, so sometimes you're like, I'll just do it in 3D, but it's fun to sit and build the model itself physically, right? Like you watch old Star Wars clips of them building those ships.
Styrene sheets that you can cut out and break up and all of that.
I mean, like the building of the Falcon was like, it's just a bunch of parts, man. And then it came together and they were like, this is cool, this works, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of World War II parts from or models that were World War II machines that they'd kit bash into the parts, you know. That's what I love. Like Adam Savage, he's got that YouTube thing, and he always talks about, because he worked on a couple of the Star Wars films, and he's like, he showed a kit of this gunner from World War II, and he's like, there's a piece of this model kit in every single ship that's in the original trilogy.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Really cool.
It was the Universal Greeble, right? Like the piece that they're like, you can rotate this however, and because of the shapes on it, it catches light perfectly, no matter how you rotate it around.
Yep, they talk about that great shape that catches the eye. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. Adam Savage is cool. Like, I feel like that dude would have a feel. He did a whole thing on. You guys ever watch The Expanse?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm closing it out right now. It's a phenomenal show. If anyone hasn't seen it, you should all watch it. But he did a whole thing about how they do a lot of practical effects on there, and like he kit bashed a bunch of stuff. Like the guy, it wasn't Adam Savage who did the work on there. It was the engineer.
The set designer's name is escaping me. Yeah.
Yeah, he just kit bashed. He he took apart like their magnetic shoes are like old school like LA lights where they like ripped. I think they ripped the lights out of there and put on some boots. The cool looking cell phones. You think it's like, you know, some of it looks like, you know, it's a video feed coming up there. It's literally plexiglass with a printout, like a vinyl printout of the screen, just put on the plexiglass, and then a light at the base shining up, and it gives it the look of a computer screen. Obviously, if they're talking to somebody, that's CG, but if they're just looking at information, it's not actually put on the screen. It's just a printout. I'm like, that's the kind of stuff I love.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so fun to see the creativity in the workshops and things like that. Like going into a workshop of somebody. So you know Phil Tippett, the guy that original Star Wars stuff. So my studio when I was living in California in Berkeley, it was just down the road from his studio.
Yeah, he was over for dinner yesterday, hanging out.
But just going into his studio and just all the stuff that was going on, and you know, he had a couple of the new. He was making a new set of chessmen for the Millennium Falcon chess set.
Oh, cool!
Oh, yeah.
Just to see all the tools and everything around there, I'm like, you know, can I move in here? It's just like for me, it's like a heaven. Like to
totally
rules and stuff like that. I could just definitely live in a place like that and be totally inspired by it all.
I would have a field day in there because it's like. Not a lot of people have that level of freedom, right? To like my studio's got some stuff I can work on, but I don't have like random things just sitting around where I can go dig out and be like, I need to build a ship here, so I'm gonna just parts.
I mean, Adam Savage just pulls out his vacuum former, or he pulls out his his, you know, whatever it is. He's got a million tools, and it's cool to do that. And one thing I've noticed as well that has helped me, like we've kind of talked about, is the little maquettes and things. You know, even having a little box that's lit up with a few little blobs of clay thrown on it, you know, even that can be really helpful to you know, get a start.
Sure.
You know, rather than just starting from scratch, which I do as well. I do a lot of just, you know, whatever, kind of start making some marks and then respond to it is a big part.
I've gotten good at taking photographs of like random. So I mentor under Sean Murray occasionally when he's available to talk. And years ago he got me to take photos, not just of like I take a lot of photos of like dead trees and broken buildings and stuff because I feel like I see crazy shapes in everything. That's just the way my mind works now. So, but like he got me to take photos of like unique things. Like when I used to live in a high rise, I would do like a walkabout inside the high rise once, and I found like pipes and like cool little structures in there and little cracks in the walls and stuff. Like things you don't really go looking for, but here I am finding it. And then when I walked around the city, I would take low angle shots of like just mounds of ice. Like I have a painting with some ice in it, and a lot of that came from photographs that I took, right? Just random things that people don't. So he basically taught me to don't take photos of things everybody's taking photos of. Take photos of like go a little deeper, right? And you find the cool, unique stuff. And then
well, and that's for me, the old world has been a super inspiring place. You know, like the underside of a drain even.
Yep.
And see the kind of patina and the colors, like the green glow that comes from the algae or whatever that's dripping off of whatever the stone or the metal or the stucco, and there's just so much out there. And I think as an artist, when you're open to looking at that stuff and all those different levels and what its potential could be, life is just a lot more interesting and rich when you've got your eyes constantly open. Like you're saying, you're walking down the street, you see this shape, and like famously they talk about the Slave 2 ship was just a light. It
was like a lamppost, a bulb or something. Yeah.
And when you start seeing things in that way, it can be really, really quite stunning. So like here in Utah, one of the things I love is going down to southern Utah in the Red Rock country. You really feel like you're on an alien planet, and it's that has its own kind of vibe and feeling. Just the rocks and down from the tiny details all the way to obviously the big.
Don't they shoot a lot of Mars in Utah? Like any movies with Mars shot there, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
Cool.
It's had a lot of movies over the years of being on alien planets and stuff like that. You really get that feeling down there.
Do you ever go on like a walkabout? Do you like ever smoke up and just go on a walkabout? You don't have to. You don't have to admit to it live. It's fine.
My kids might be watching this.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot. I was going to ask you, do any of your kids show any wanting to be an artist?
Well, I think one of the things too is just you really need to have a huge drive and a huge passion to do it. As it's competitive. It's something that you got to be thinking about 24/7. And so I'm definitely not going to push anybody into it. All of them can draw. We have these kind of drawing parties, and everybody has sketchbooks, and they fill one up. I make sure and buy them a new one.
That's cool.
And so we've been drawing a lot of the robots from Pacific Rim. And my kids,
dude, I love Jaegers,
and they love the kaiju and the Jaegers.
People hate that movie. I had a conversation with someone who was telling us a friend of ours hates that movie, and I was just like, how can you hate giant? Like I grew up loving Voltron, right? And like Ultraman and Spectraman. So like giant robots fighting kaijus, like I'm in. And like I remember when that movie came out, I was like, I didn't go in there thinking this is gonna be phenomenal. Like I just thought this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna feel like I felt like a child watching that movie because I loved every minute. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world, but it was fun to watch. It has a basic plot.
I was gonna say it's a pretty solid movie for sure.
I enjoy it. I watch if it's on. I'm watching it.
Yeah.
I want to see some of your kids' Jaeger designs.
Oh, actually, my 9-year-old, he really impressed me with some of these designs. I've been amazed what he's done. But he's really focused. Actually, both my sons are really focused on that. They just love it.
That's cool.
You learn so much about it. You learn the figure. You learn the proportions. You also learn just dividing up in abstract shapes the armor. What makes a science fiction shape? That's actually we've been talking all week.
Yeah.
What the sci-fi shape? Oh, hey, here's something that's kind of cool that's going to be happening soon. There's a company called Trikel that I've been working closely with. Company that make brushes and panels.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been designing some panels for them, some science fiction shapes, which they're going to have some panels that, so instead of just kind of the square format or whatever, they're going to have, kind of some octagonal,
some wild panel to paint on.
Yeah.
You're going to bring a bunch of these to LuxCon. I'm going to have to find you for anybody else.
And so what the idea though that I had for this is that it's like the bridge, part of it is like a bridge screen. So you're on your starship, right? You're looking at your bridge screen. So what are you looking at in your bridge screen? And so that's kind of the panel shape that you have. So instead of, the typical rectangle that was in the original Star Trek, as things have advanced and things are sleeker and stuff like that, there's different shapes that kind of happened. And so anyway, that's what we're going to be doing with that. And we're going to have, it's going to happen at some point. We'll have a competition too of science fiction stuff.
That sounds fun.
See what everybody does.
Great.
Well, we're a little bit over time. But I'd definitely like to have you back on because I think there's a lot more we can talk about when it comes to sci-fi. If you are interested in being on the FET call when we do that, I can invite you in for that because we're going to do a final recap. We're all waiting for them to do they always do like a director's round table thing afterwards. So we're all waiting to watch that first.
Cool. But, if I'm in, that'd be fun.
Cool. There's a bunch more stuff we can talk about. I'll invite you back in because we're about an hour and 20, and I think both Andrew and I both have to go deal with kids soon. We still got young kids.
Me too.
But thanks for being on. I appreciate you taking the time to be on a Friday night. I know you're probably busy. Definitely let me know about your LuxCon paintings before you bring them because I'm snagging one of those this year. If there's anything else you want to talk about, any questions that I didn't ask you before I call it.
I think we're good. I think this is all fun, and I think it was fun also to kind of dive. I didn't know we were going to talk about animation, but I think that's a really cool space, and there's still a lot more I think we could talk on that.
We could do a whole show on animation with you on that.
Oh, definitely.
So cool. Dive a little bit more into 80s movies. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I do want to do an 80s movie call. Okay. All right. We'll definitely have you back on.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, I keep wanting to do it. So I initially asked Eli if he wanted to do an 80s call, and he said, I hate the 80s. And I was like, wow. I was like, I kind of want you on the show just to talk about why you hate the 80s. But I feel like it's more personal, and I don't want to drag him down that path. But if it was something like Rainbow Bright's a bitch, like... I kind of want to know.
So he's not a fan. Is that what he's saying?
He just doesn't seem to like the 80s for some reason. I didn't really push the issue. When he sounded very like adamant about it. So I was like, I'm not going to push the issue on that. But okay. Thanks for everyone who was watching. Our guest, we do have another episode this Sunday. Our guest is David Peterson, who does Mouse Guard. And we'll be talking about the books. We'll be talking about the potential movie that could have happened, may still happen, and other things. Bryan, thanks again for being on. Stand by. I'm going to take us offline.